Okay. Zok the Hail of the Gemara. The Gemara had a shaila. The Gemara had a shaila as to the last thing we know was the Gemara had a shaila as to why is it that someone dies after the shechita? Is it because of the ruach that causes the bilbul, and that's why he wouldn't go into golus because the ruach hastens his death, or is it because he's moving around? So we learned yesterday as well that there's a difference between killing someone b'mezid and killing someone b'shogi. In order to be able to go into golus, in order to have a chiyuv golus, the person has to die right away from the makkah, not hastened by anything else. However, when it comes time to discussing if someone killed b'mezid, if he's chayiv, there he'll be chayiv even if it doesn't happen right away, even if the death doesn't occur right after his makkah, and even if there's other factors that hasten the death, he'll still be a chiyuv for mezid. There's just no din golus. The din golus is very specific, and the pasuk tells us it only applies under certain situations. Now, Rabbi Yehuda told us in the Mishnah that although the Tanakama says that a mace could only be recognized for 3 days, and after 3 days not, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says it depends on the situation, it depends on where it is, it depends on the mace. There's too many things that it depends on. So the Gemara is not sure what Rabbi Yehuda meant. So we're on the first wide line on Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Eloi Kol. The Gemara has a shayla what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, L'Kula poet, is he arguing L'Kula, and he's saying that even if the mace wasn't recognized and discovered till 3 days or more than 3 days after the person died, even there it would be recognizable. Or what he's saying is, no, 3 days is no guarantee. It might be that the mess becomes unrecognizable even after 1 or 2 days. So Toshma, to Gavri the Tava Bakarmi, there was a person who drowned in a place called Karmi. Vasku Abehedja. And where did he wash up? He washed up in Behedja, Levosar Tlosa Yomi, and it was more than 3 days later. And the Inzava Ravdimi min Hardal Lidzisu. And based on recognizing his body, even after 3 days, Ravdimi was able to confirm. Oh, thank you very much. Ravdimi was able to confirm, in fact, this was the man, and his wife is free. So you have a raya from here that after 3 days, you could still recognize a body, and that would have to be Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, because if not him, it's not Tanakama. So it must be that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said is Allah Kula. Visu, and there was another story. Who governed the Atma Bediglas. Someone drowned in the Tigris River. Vasku Agishra, the Shavistina. Where did he come out of the river? After 5 days, Rashi tells us, 5 days after he went missing in the river, he washed up downstream. At Gishra the Shavistina, it was a place near Bava. And the Intzava Rava Ladvisu, and Rava married off his wife. In other words, we accepted that he died. Apuma de Shushvini, based on the testimony of the Malavin. So I guess they found the body and they made a levaya. So the people who were there about a levaya who saw the body, they came and told Rava what they saw, but they only saw it levasar chamishi yomi. So once again, you see that the body was recognizable and the testimony was accepted even after 3 days. If you would say that Yehuda ben Bava argues with Kula and says that you could identify a body even more than 3 days later, well then Inu David Yehuda ben Bava. So Rava's psak and Rav Dimi bin Ardo's psak would be following Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. What if Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava is arguing with Chumrah and he's saying that even less time than 3 days is the body recognizable? Well then Inu David Kaman, who would they be paskening like? Zok Gemara, the Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava and the Chacham are talking about when the body is not submerged in water. But when the body is submerged in water, shiny maya the tzamsi. Water seals in the body, and water preserves the body so that the image doesn't change, and therefore the testimony would be good. Correct Gemara, didn't we just say yesterday, for Amrit Maya Marzumaka? We had a story where they hung a guy off a ship by his leg, and his body ended up getting severed from his leg. When they pulled up the string, it was only his leg there. And we said he's considered dead. And the reason why he's considered dead is even though it's only one wound and a person can survive normally from one wound, but since he's in the water, that messes him up. When there's a maka, when someone has a wound, being in the water will kill him. If his goof is complete and his goof is in the water, mitzmas samis, it shrivels it, it seals it, that it preserves it so that it will be visible. But that doesn't mean it's preserved forever. It's aske, when the body does come up, they look at the body as soon as they remove it from the water. If they leave the body alone after they take it out of the water and they don't examine it right away, or someone found the body that was in water, but they didn't find the body right away, they found the body when it was already out of water for a while, and mitbach topach, the body blows up, as Rashi says, the body will blow up, and therefore it will be and it won't be recognizable. So we don't have a raya from here, because these were bodies that were in the water until they were found, and they were identified as soon as they got out of the water. Come on, let's slow. Zok the heilige Mishnah weiter. The Gemara hasn't, but I'm not sure if there's a difference if the body gets preserved better in one or the other. Zok the Mishnah weiter. Nofal lamayim. He fell into a body of water. Bein sheyesh lemsav. Sai, if you could stand there, the Gemara is going to explain what this means. But say if you could stand on the water and see land in all directions, meaning if someone made it out, you would see. Bein she'ein lehemsav. Say if it's in a very large body of water, and it's possible that he left the water and you wouldn't have seen it because he would have been out of your eyesight.
But just because you see land in all directions doesn't necessarily mean that you could see a man leaving the water. You could see land for 5 miles.
So I guess Yesh Lemsav and Ein Lemsav means whether or not you'd be able to see. As a matter of fact, the poskim discuss what if there's security cameras along the entire perimeter of the body of water. Is that called Yesh Lemsav? Because if the person would have came out of the water, he would have been caught on security cameras. Or if it was an area that's populated, like a downtown Toronto, where if someone got out of Lake Ontario, he would have been noticed because he would have come up somewhere where it's populated. So the poskim seem to be mekel in those cases. So Dr. Gemara, regardless, it's Ishtoi Asura. His wife will be Asur. Rashi says, Shema la'achar prishosam yisam, just because you didn't see him leaving, maybe after you left, Yotzav alachli, then he came up from the water and left. I don't know how long he could hold his breath, but that's part of what we're going to discuss. The suburb mayor, Adam Yochal Lichlois, Velishes B'mayim, Yoim Yamayim. A person can survive in water a couple of days, which obviously means he's sticking his head up to breathe from time to time. But if he just has a little part of his body above the water level, you wouldn't notice it. Omrab Meir, a person once fell into a large bar, and he actually made it out alive after 3 days. So you see, a person can manage in water for a long time. Omrab Yosy. Maisa Besuma.
That's a bigger finish. People can survive. I know people who survive in water. Not that I know I read people survive in water 25 hours, but that was warm water. A bore is usually cold water.
I hear.
Like very cold water. This person died of hypothermia.
So Maisa Besuma, Sheyored Litboil B'mayim. A blind person went to Toivel in a cave. Rashi says, Mayim Sheish Lem Soifim. A cave is Mayim Sheish Lem Soif, because you can only get out of the cave in one hole, one entrance. V'yorad Moishchei Acharov. And of course, he had a guide. So his guide went in with him. And the people outside, waiting for the guide and the blind person to reemerge, V'sho Kedei Shetetzei Navsham, they waited long enough that at this point, there's no way they could be alive. They Yesiu Es Neshei, and they married off their wives. In other words, they assumed that their wives died. So this is Rabbi Yossi talking. So what does Rashi say? Rabbi Yosy argues on the Tanakh and says, Ishtay muteris, his wife is mutter. Because over ein adam yochel lishes b'mayim kolkach. A person cannot survive in water that long, like shloisha yom. The imishum shema yatzal alter, and if you're worried that maybe he got out right away, ein zu chashash, that's not a concern. So inafak habu chazalei. If he would have came out of the cave, if these people would have came out of the cave, people would have seen them. Avo mayim she'ein lam soif, but if it's mayim she'ein lam soif, there moidir Rabbi Yosy de asur. Even if Rabbi Yosy would agree that the woman is asur, shema yatzal alter l'merchak v'lo ra'u. Maybe he got out of the water far away and you didn't see him. So, based on the way Rashi's saying it, it's consistent with what Chaim Tzvi said. Not that if you could see land, because it could be 5-10 miles away, you still wouldn't notice if someone slipped out of the water. So, Mayim she'ein lam soif means it's possible for someone to slip out of the water and you wouldn't see it from where you're standing. The Shuv Maisa Ba'asya, and this was the story that we learned about yesterday, or Chwan Tzlon, it was a story in Asfia. The Echad Sheshel Shalu Liyam, they tied up his foot and they threw him overboard and he was hanging upside down, head first in the water. Also biyadam el aragla. When they pulled it up, all that came up was his leg, meaning his body got severed from his leg. Amru Chachamim. The Chachamim said, Minar kuvo l'mayla, if the leg was severed from the body above the knee, tinase, she could remarry. There's no way he could have survived. And like we just learned earlier, it's because even with such a wound in the water, it would stop. It would end his life eventually. I'm not sure if it's because it was bleeding would never stop or for some other reason.
If the guy's upside down, which way is Lamala?
Lamala means as if he was standing up. Now there's more of his leg that was taken away. Minakuva lamata, but if the leg was only cut below the knee, loisina say there it's possible that she would have survived, that he would have survived. So therefore we can't let his wife marry. Now it's very interesting. There's a shita on the Rishonim. I forgot the shita who says, what does it say here? Bein b'mayim sheyesh lantoif bein she'ein lantoif ishtoy asura. And he's medayik. It doesn't say ishtoy asura la'olam. It says ishtoy asura. And he wanted to be mater agunois, even if it was mayim she'ein lantoif. However, after time, he would be mater the aguna. Because sure, he didn't come home right away. But if it's a year later and the fellow still didn't come home, that would be a raya that he's not alive. And the Rishonim jump on him and say, you can't say something like that. You can't be medayik like that from the Mishnah and come up with a new kula that was unheard of. But there's a big tumult whether or not you could be mater a lady because of that. You see, it was a common problem, and the Gedolim were looking for ways to be mater.
That's a very, very easy heter just because he doesn't come home. Wait a year and finish. Never such a case. A person can have amnesia, a person can have all kinds of issues.
Yep. In a harami. The question here is, you see situations even where it's so unlikely that he's going to make it home. He fell off a ship in an ocean. What's the likelihood that he's going to end up being alive? Yet officially, it's a ma'im she'ein lam soif, can't be matir. So the Achronim ask, I don't understand. You accept a shvacha edus of an isha to be matir an isha levaila, and when someone is known to have went overboard in the middle of the ocean, then you're not going to be matir? Are we trying to help a woman remarry or not? If we're trusting an isha, we shouldn't assume that someone who fell into the water in the middle of the ocean, how's he going to get to shore? So there's one of the Achronim, I can't remember who he said it over from, Rabbi Elephant said it over from, but one of the Bavusta Achronim, I'm not sure if it's the Meshach Chochma or maybe one of the Chassidish for him, says, based on, he doesn't say it based on the story, but it helps me understand what he's saying. There's a famous story with Chazon Ish. Somebody asked him about a surgery. The Chazon Ish says, do the surgery in America, don't do it in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because a Chachmei Eretz Yisrael holds that the condition that you have in a behemoth would be a treifa. The Chachmei Chutzlaretz held that you're not a treifa. So that impacts the Metzias. So better do the surgery where the Chacham and Paskin that it's not a treifa, because there you won't die. Because that's a story from the Chazon Ish. the Rabbanan wanted to keep hope up in a person, in order that if someone falls into the ocean, there should still be hope that he should be able to be found. They paskin like that you can't marry his wife off, so that will automatically create a mitzvah of hope that maybe he will survive. That's the it's a Hasidic Torah that they say to explain why the Rabbanan, because they knew if they paskin that's Vadei Misa, that means anytime a guy falls into the water, he's going to die, because the Chacham's psak impact the mitzvahs.
Very interesting, because it's very similar to the word that I heard from someone when the Torah mentions Moshe Rabbeinu's place of burial, but it says, "I'm going to tell you the neighborhood, but you'll never
I won't
be
give you
able
the
to find
address.
it." So the Maral's brother asks in his sefer, so why would the Torah tell us the neighborhood? Baal Pa'or, that's where he's buried, but don't ever think you're going to find him. Lo yada ish es purasa. Why was it significant to know where he was buried? The Maral's brother says that it's in order to give people hope that people who didn't have any ura, people who didn't have any proper food, they went into the chambers, they went into the ocean where they got torn up by chayas, right? Those people will feel, am I ever going to come back by Tchias Amesim? So Moshe Rabbeinu Dafka wanted to be buried in Baal Pa'or, to be buried in such an awful, disgusting place, to say that if Moshe Rabbeinu was going to come back from Baal Pa'or,
It will come back.
we're going to also
Very
come back.
nice. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Tell me about it. Novel of mine. Ben Sheish Leim Soif, Ben Shein Leim Soif, Ishtay Asura Dever Meir. The Chacham might be mine, Sheish Leim Soif, Ishtay Muteris, because you would see him emerging from the water. The Shein Leim Soif, Ishtay Asura, because he could have come out of the water and we wouldn't have noticed. Hey Chedam Ma'im Sheish Leim Soif. What is the definition of Ma'im Sheish Leim Soif? Omer Abaye Kol Sho'ayim V'Royim Arba Ruchoyim. Yesh Leim Soif means that you could see the edge of the water on all four sides, so you will see if someone emerges from the water. Who gathered the Tova Ba'agma de Samki? Someone drowned in a swamp of the city of Samki. Now it's very interesting. This is not flowing water. An agam, a swamp, similar to Washington, is the same smelly characters remain there, but never get flushed out as it would be in a spring where constantly we're replacing the old swampy, smelly water with fresh water. So, and therefore, Intzava Rav Shila Ledevisu. Rav Shila said that it's considered like a Maim Sheyesh Shlem Soif. And Rashi speaks out. Why is it? So Rashi is an Agam de Simpi. Agamam Shaloshim Makim. Agam is a marsh. Marsh, I think, means a marsh. Balaz. It's still water. The Eina Maim Chaim. They don't flow. K'mayim Sheyesh Shlem Soif Damu. That's like Maim Sheyesh Shlem Soif. Even though you can't see. You know why? So they wouldn't be able to swim far in the water. They would have seen them. So the way I understood it is that there's no current, it's still water. If there's underwater current, then a person could technically be pushed very far away and they would come out of the water much, much further than you would expect a person to be able to get naturally by swimming, or maybe even by being pushed. But in the swamp, where it's still water, if a person would have, for sure, if he would have emerged, for sure he would have been seen, even though technically this was a larger body of water. The problem is it was a Maim Shein Lam Soif. How could you be matter? Amalei Rav Shmuel, Rav told Shmuel, Tan Deshamte. We should put Rav Shila in Cherim for being matter, a woman who it's very likely that her husband's still alive. Amalei Shmuel said, let's not be hot-headed. Let's drill down a little bit to make sure we know the mitzias before we just willy-nilly put somebody in Cherim. Let's first send him to ask him, to question him about what happened. They asked him, they beat around the bush to slowly hone in on their target. The first thing they asked him was, Ma'im Shein Lam Soif. Ma'im Shein Lam Soif. Ishtay Asura Miteres. Shalach Lahu, he answered, Ishtay Asura. So then he asked, okay, how about Agma de Samki? Is that Ma'im Shein Lam Soif or Ma'im Shein Lam Soif? Shalach Lahu, Shila answered, Ma'im Shein Lam Soif. So then they asked him, based on these two Piskei Halacha that you just gave us, Umar, Rab Shila, my time of it. Why in the world did you do something like that? So he said, "You're right." Rab Shila admitted that you're right. Mita ta'ina, I made a mistake. Ana sabri, I thought, even the cup of a kaimu, since this water is still water, it doesn't move. Kemaim change dummy, like we discussed, that the person wouldn't be able to get too far and then get out of the water. But it's not true. Even ika gully, emer gully ishpuli. There are still some underwater currents. Even in a swamp, there's other currents that would maybe allow the body or the person to be transported far away. Now, even though he's technically paskin wrong, he doesn't deserve to go into cherem. A rab would only go into cherem if he knowingly paskin against halacha. So therefore, they should not have put him into cherem. And I guess since he's another gadol, he would be protected that there wouldn't be a takala because of it. And maybe he really did die. Kari Shmuel.
Maybe the main issue is that he admitted that he made a mistake, even though he willingly did it. But he did tshuva in that sense.
But it doesn't say that he reverses psak. Because we're going to see a lot, we're going to see soon in the Gemara, that in all these cases where we say you can't marry, with the Evid, if she married, we wouldn't make them divorce.
And that's the reason why he didn't do it.
Could be, yeah. Could be, yeah. Kari Shmuel alay the Rav. Shmuel told Rav, you're a tzaddik, Rav. You are about to put someone into cherem unlawfully, but a tzaddik is safe, is protected. Their Rebbeinu Shalom didn't make you do the cherem improperly. Kari Rav alay the Shmuel. Rav told Shmuel, who do you think stopped me? It was you. What was my Yeshua? How did I get saved from doing this bad thing? It's because I asked an Eitzah from another God like Shmuel. Amar Rabbi. Rabbi said, they were fishermen and they would set up nets in the Yarden, and that's how they caught fish. These michmarin it's an interesting, if you ever are in the narrows between Lake Simcoe and Lake Kuching, you see on either side of the route that boats take, there's a series of posts in the water. And if you read the historical placards, it says that many, many years ago, the Indians, the way they would fish was they put a whole bunch of vertical posts in the water and then weave reeds through them, and it acted like a net. And as the fish were swimming, they would get caught there. So that's similar to what machmer and mechmorim b'yarden is. Now, what they used to do is, does anybody know how a beaver's dam works? The beaver's dam is, you could only access it through a doorway that's under the water. But once you get into the dam, once you get into his little, whatever it's called, his den, it goes above the water level. So you could be standing up above the water level and be living there for a long time because you have air there, but the access is only through an underwater entrance. So that's what they did by the Mechila Shaldogim. At the side of these large bodies of water, they would make these little openings that they were able to get in, and if someone got in there, he would be able to breathe and survive because it would be built up above the height of the water. So they made those, I guess, to keep fishing. I'm not sure exactly how they used them. So what happened was there were people who were, I'm sorry?
Like the canoe casting, Camp Aguda.
That's right. The nichnas echad men mechila shaldogim, and one of the people got into this mechila shaldogim, and it got dark. Now, normally, how do you see your way out? There is some light that penetrates the doorway of the entrance to the beaver. So even if you're in there, you know how to get out. But it got pitch black, and the guy couldn't get out. So he was stuck in this mechila shaldogim. He couldn't get out. His chaver was waiting outside. The guy went into the water. He didn't realize that he was in a place where he was safe, and his chaver's not coming up. So the chaver waited until the point where there's no way this guy could survive underwater this long. There's a whole big shaila in the Chayim how long it is, 3 hours. Uba the idea. Basically, he went home to his wife, and he said, "Your husband went under, he didn't come up." The next day, in the sunshine, the hikr pischa shel mechila.
And this fellow who was stuck in this area was able to get out. Uba, and he came. Umotza hesped gadol b'seich beisai. He saw a huge levaya. There's a huge levaya by his house. Omar Rebbe. So the beautiful part about this is at least now he knows what people are going to say about him by his levaya. You know the famous story with Heshe Nussbaum. His father, Mordechai Nussbaum, once went to the person who wrote the Yiddish Word, Mr. Friedenson, and he told him, I have no tzavik in my mind. When someone dies, right away the next Shabbos, you have a beautiful obituary written about him in the magazine. There's no way you could write it so quickly. You must already have written obituaries on all of the older, well-known people in Klal Yisrael, and then when the guy dies, you just pull it out of your file and you print it. So he says, you surely have written one for me. Mordechai Nussbaum told him, do me a favor, let me read it over to make sure you're not missing anything. That's what he told them. So here they had a chance to see what people were going to say about my husband. He doesn't like that story.
No, I went over it.
So Omar Rebbe. So Rebbe said, Kama gedolim divrei chachamim. Here you see the deep insight and the greatness of the words of the chachamim. She'amru, they said, Ma'im she'esh lem soif ishtei muteres, she'ein lem soif ishtei asura. And they anticipated something like this, that although it seems like he didn't survive, when indeed he really did survive. Zok to Gemara, if that's the case, Ma'im she'esh lehem soif nami leichesh lemechila shal dogam. Once you know that there's a possibility that there's this beaver's dam type of situation, so even by Ma'im she'esh lehem soif, if you don't see him come up, you should still answer his wife, because maybe he's in such a situation. In a smaller body of water, they normally don't make these types of things. It's only normally put into larger bodies of water. How long it would, if someone submerges? There's a shayla, if it's minutes, if it's hours. There's a big machlokes about that in the place. Amar Bashi, Ha de Amur Rabbanan, Mayim Shein Lem Soif, Ishlo Yasura. This is the Rabbanan Machmer, Mayim Shein Lem Soif. That's only by a regular person where he wouldn't make the news if he was discovered somewhere. I will turn my Rabban. He's a personality. He's a chashav Rab. Loy. Why? Because either Salik color is. If a God Ladar shows up somewhere, it's gonna end up all over the tabloid. So therefore, by an Adam Gadol, we don't have to worry. And therefore we'd be able to marry his wife off, his almanah. But it's not true. If a while passed and the woman remarried, we would not make her get divorced, but we wouldn't allow her to get married. Tanya Amar Abagamuyah, Pamachas, and this is the theme of Daf Yomi, as you see on the sign behind me. Pamachas I was once riding in my boat. And I saw another ship that was sinking. That was issuing a mayday. I was going in a boat.
A boat, not his boat.
Oh, okay, Shine. Well, you see, Mitzvah. That's why you want to go on a boat ride to finish Yosy Simon Yevamos, because that's what the Gemara discusses. The Gemara discusses boating at the end of Yevamos.
All kinds of terrible consequences.
Well, you see, Mitzvah. No, this is a story with a happy ending. Well, you see, Mitzvah. There was a passenger in that ship that was going down, and my heart broke that we were going to lose a great Talmud Chacham and running Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva got shipwrecked. And then after I finished my journey, I came onto dry land and I went into the Besmedrash. You know who's sitting there? And I see Rabbi Kiva's dead. Rabbi Kiva's Pavgalacha. Your boat sunk. How in the world are you sitting here alive? Who took you out of the ocean? Who saved you? Amali, he said, Daf, shall svina on his damami, a board from the ship that broke apart. I was able to hold on to and use it as a flotation device. I would have been run over if a wave comes over me. I would have been thrown and toppled. Every wave that came over me, I didn't try fighting it head on, and I would have been blown over. I kept my head low and let the wave go over me, so it didn't throw me off my board, and that's how I survived. So from here, the Chacham said, what if we're in a period of time where goyim are bothering us? Don't take on the goyim head on. The attitude of the JDL, we're gonna fight back. Never again. That's not how we're supposed to deal with goyim who are oppressing us. Rather, the best way to deal with goyim that are oppressing us is Yidana Le'Roisha. And Rashi says, Yitcha Mipnei Hashav Lo Yiskarben. Don't fight them back. Don't hit them head on. That's only going to empower them to make it worse for us. Let's keep our heads down. Let's roll with the punches, and eventually this Russia will pass. That's how we're supposed to deal with goyim and threats. Dr. Meir Shapiro. What does it mean? I was shipwrecked. I was lost in the Golas, and I was being influenced by bad things, and I was not getting to my destination. So what happens? Take a daf shosfina, which refers to the daf yomi. That's what Rav Shapiro says. I took the daf yomi, and every wave that came, I shuckled. Every daf I gave a shuckle. Every daf I learned. Every daf I heard it. And daf by daf, wave by wave, I was able to go through everything, and that's how we come to success, and that's how we're able to navigate the storm. That's what Rav Shapiro says. That is the motto of Rav Shapiro's daf yomi. This go on here. Where's Akiva when we need him? That's right. Okay. Zok Tehillah Gemara Vayter. What's that? No, Rabbi Akiva knew how to get saved when he was in a bad situation. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Tanya. Rabbi Akiva also had the same incident. I saw a ship that was being bounced around. So it's not a sense, it wasn't Nishkra B'yom, it's Mutarefes B'yom. I guess it's getting bounced around, but it wasn't destroyed. Was I sinking? And I was worried about a Talmid Chacham in it. Umani or Meir. Kaputkaya. I guess he thought the whole thing was kaput. And when he got to the country of Kaputkaya, how did you get out of the shipwreck? The waves threw me from wave to wave. That's literally surfing. That's already surfing, right? Until the ocean's waves threw me onto the shore. Amarti. On the Turkey, okay. Amarti how great are the words of the Chacham? Because you see, even in the most dire situation, a person could possibly survive. What if he fell into a lion's den? You don't say Eidos that he died. He could survive a lion's den. But into a den of snakes and scorpions, they could say Eidos, but he for sure died. Even if he's not Yosef Tzadikim. Oh, that's right. The deal was going by race. So Tosfos actually talks about that a little bit. He's talking to Gemara. Even if he fell into snakes, not made on him. Why? And Rashi says, what does chaver mean? Maybe he knows how to be lenachish. He knows how to say certain hocus pocus things that will save him. Tanakama to save him. Well, let me just finish this. The Tanakama who holds that we know for sure he's going to die. It's because Agav it's a maskele. And he says something that's very, very interesting, Rashi says, which is a little bit shvelach. He said, when you fall into a lion's den is larger. So you're not going to likely fall directly on a lion. If you fall directly on a lion, that's like an attack. You provoke him, he's going to eat you. But if you fall into a lion's den, since it's a bigger area, you're likely not going to fall right on top of a lion. But a pit full of snakes, you're going to land right on the snake. If you land on the snake, they tell you, if you step on a rattlesnake, it'll bite you. But if you don't antagonize it, you walk right by it, it won't bite you. So, based on the Rashi's pshat, they're kind of mass. So it has nothing to do with snakes and lions. It has to do with goyim and chafira. It has to do with how big the place is. What if it's a very big place and if you fall, you won't fall on the snake? So that's what some people ask on Rashi's pshat. But Rashi saying, since normally snake pits are full of snakes and goyim arayis aren't wall-to-wall arayis, therefore it's likelier that you'll survive. Interesting enough is it says maybe Allah has saved him. So there's a famous shtickle that Chaim Tzvi once told us about, where the Gra when the Rambam said that these things don't really work, these L'choshim, they don't work, the Gra attacked very stark the Rambam and says, philosophia also. How could you say these things don't work? So they actually discuss this Shemachabrahu, that Yidei L'chosh, does that mean he'll be malachish and the animals won't bother him? Or does that mean even if he gets a snake bite, he knows a lachish that will save him? And on that is where the Rambam comments that it doesn't really help. The Rambam doesn't really help. It'll maybe calm him down and he won't panic, but it doesn't really help. And on that, the Gra says that it's nonsense. If the Gemara says it helps, it helps. Okay, you want to say something?
No, you're there a little question. We're worried about if you're a question for hocus pocus, so then why aren't we the question for hocus pocus in the opposite?
In any scenario.
In any scenario.
I hear.
So is the hocus pocus just like what the snake charmers do? Or
Yeah, it could be that's what it's referring to. Those who know that's what it's referring to. That's not kishuf, yeah. Tana Rabbanim. What if someone falls into a smelter? You could be made for sure he's not alive. No one could survive a smelter. Because even if he's there for a nanosecond, he's vaporized. But if it's a liyayra, malaya shemen, you fell into a big pot full of wine or oil, you could be made on him. Because when he falls into the pot, there'll be a splash, and the oil will go out of the pot. And where will it fall? It'll fall on the coals and the fuel below. The oil acts as fuel as well, so that'll actually make it cook even more. But when he jumps into the pot, the splash of the wine will actually cool the pot off because it's going to extinguish some of the flames. Amalek told him, no, even in wine, he's for sure dead. That chilasa mechaba. Sure, could be at first it puts out the coals, but then they do catch back on fire and they'll be even hotter than before. The soifemah. Do you know someone who's not alive anymore? But we grew up with him, who in the Nazi camps, I think in Auschwitz, as a child, he was thrown into a pot of soup, and he survived as a baby. You know who that was? It was Chaim Sussman. Chaim Sussman from Frontenac, not the Chaim Sussman that was in Aguda, the Chaim Sussman from Denal Paints. As a baby in the concentration camp, a Nazi picked him up and just threw him into a pot of soup. That was cooked. And of course, he was scooped out, and he's alive. I mean, he's not alive anymore, but he wasn't alive. He survived. Amr Meir, Maisa be'echot shenafel l'baragot. Tanya. Amr Meir, a maskin Maisa Nisim. What do you tell me? Once upon a time, a guy fell into a baragot and survived. Coming a ride from that. That's Maisa Nisim. My Maisa Nisim. I don't understand. Why is that a day? That a guy survived. If it's because for 3 days not eating and not drinking, how did he survive? Well, I'll prove to you that you could survive 3 days without eating and drinking. It says so clearly that's not my Nisim. If that's what Esther was asking of all of Klal Yisrael, clearly you could survive that. If a guy's in the water, in the ocean, for 3 days, it's impossible that he wouldn't fall asleep and then drown. If someone says someone makes a shvur that he won't sleep for 3 days, that's called a shvur shav, because we already know we don't wait till he falls asleep. It's an impossible thing to do. So Malka and Noisa, you give him Malchus because the shvur is a shvur shav, it never counts, and therefore if he should alter, he can go to sleep right away. The avlo was he made the shvur. It's not possible someone could not sleep for 3 days. For Meir, my timer. So what shot by Rav Meir? Rav Kahana keeping al gav keeping havu. So the question is, how is it according to Rav Meir that he survived? It was not Ma'aseh Nisim. So Rashi says keeping al gav keeping. There was some type of dome or arch is under the water. Does the article explain? Rashi's keeping beninim binyanim bu'lomois. There was some type of structures built v'nishna aleim. He was able to lean on them and sleep. That was in the water. And there were arches in the water. So there were arches built in the water that he was somehow able to lean on and sleep. Sorry? In the cistern. I guess they built some arches. I don't know why there would have been arches, but whatever it is. For Abanon, yeah, they built them. The shishayu, they were made out of marble. They were too slippery. You lean on those who go flying. So there was no way for him to stay awake naturally. It's impossible that he couldn't have leaned for a little bit and fell asleep. He only had to sleep a drop within the 3 days, and he could survive. I'm not sure how that would have worked. Listen to Ayid. So Ziyad Tzaddik, he voluntarily dug boiris so that there'll be plenty of water for the Yidden that are being oiled in the regal. So all along the road, He was the one who put out the soda stands. He stealth to the coffee. He stealth to the drinks for all the people who were coming to do Oila Rekel. And Rahman al-Islam, his own daughter, him who dug boars his whole life full of water, his own daughter fell into the bar. Shenafel lebar agadol. Ubayu v'aidiyu leRab Chanina ben Doisa. They told the Chanina, Reb Chanina, Daven, we have an emergency. Reb Nachonya's daughter fell into the bar. Shari Shoyna Amlam Shalom. The first is, don't worry about it. An hour, a person could survive. They came back an hour later. Rabbi, she's drowning. Shania Amar Lehem Shalom, don't worry about it. Shalish is, but a third hour, he knew she couldn't survive if she fell into the bar. Amalem, Reb Chanina ben Doisa said, also, don't worry, she was saved. How in the world could he have possibly known that she was saved? Amar Law, Biti Mielcha. Then they went and they saw that she was not saved. So they asked her, how did you survive if you fell into the bar? Amar Law, she said, Zachar shal rechalim nizdamanli. I met there in the water a ayil, a ram, such as the Eila shal Yitzchak, v'zaken menhigoy. And there was an old man, Avram Avinu, who was leading him. And he saved me. Avram Avinu came to save me. Amru Loi, they told Reb Chanina ben Doisa, how in the world would you have known that a nace would have occurred, that the girl would have been saved? Zok to Gemara, Amalam Loi Navi Anochi, V'loi Ben Navi, I'm no Navi. It's like a typical Sat Rebbe story. Ela Davar Shat Tzadik Mis'asik Boy, Yichoshel Beizarei. I knew it's impossible that the very malacha that her father does, he's Moshe Nevesh, to build boyros, it's not Shaykh that the Rebbeinu would have killed his daughter with a bar that he dug L'Shem Shemayim. And that's how I knew she would survive. Amar Baba, Abba Pikin Meis B'nai B'tzama. Even though he dug water wells for everybody, his own son actually did die from thirst. I don't know.
I mean, was it like fuel at all, or what's the problem?
Maybe they didn't. Maybe they wanted him to come with a lifeboat. I don't know if they wanted. I'm not sure. So, nevertheless, Tosha speaks out that wasn't directly his handiwork. She didn't fall. He didn't die of thirst in his bar. Right? If her falling into his bar, that Hashem wouldn't allow to happen. But he died of thirst. It's something related to what his father did. That could happen. The people who are close to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, tzaddikim, they're analyzed and inspected with a much higher degree of inspection. And that's why he was a tzaddik and he lost his son. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is noira more on the people around him. The people who are close to him get more scrutinized. Even if there was no testimony, but a woman heard a group of women talking, Yankel died, and she came to Bezdin and she said, not that I saw him die, hearsay. I heard people talking about Yankel dying, that would be good enough. If the children are talking and playing, and they're saying Oimrim, they're saying Hareinu Hoilchin Lisbar Velikbar, is this ploini? If he hears children saying we're going to Chaim Yankel's Levaya, they're still believing. Bein Shu Mischavin U Bein Sheini Mischavin. Sai, if they're Mechavin to say Edus, Sai, if not, just hearing them talk is good enough. If you do above Oimrim by Yisrael, Alpha Bishu Mischavin. By Yisrael, he's believed, even though he wants to come and be matter this woman, and that's why he's coming to say testimony. If the guy is coming with the intention of freeing this woman, then we won't free her. If he's not telling us a fact, then we would listen. How do you know? How do you know that they went to the Levaya? They're saying we're going to go to the Levaya. Maybe they never went, and therefore maybe how do you know he died? We're coming from the Levaya. I remember when we were in Yesod Torah, the grade underneath us used to make levayas for ants, like they were very immature. We used to make a lot of we used to make fun of them. So that's what I was asking you. They were Mekayim the Gemara. Maybe they were making levaya on an ant, and they named the ant Chaim Yankel. And that's what they meant, and we came from his levaya. But Lav Daf gets real. The Gemara is the army came the Kain Rabban. They said this Rav was there, that Rav was there. No Rabbanim were by their ants levaya. These were the people who spoke. That we say the guy can't have kavanah doesn't mean he can't have kavanah to say testimony, but he can't have kavanah to be matter a woman. But if he just wants to say testimony about what he saw, not making the connection to the fact that this woman goes free with his edus, then they do say edus. How can you tell what his intention is when he's saying testimony? If a guy comes to bed and says, I saw Reuben die, let his wife get married, and we won't believe him. But if he just says, I just want the bed to know this guy died, then and we would marry his wife off based on that. Isn't this what happened in Oishia? The Rebbe, he was martyr them. He was martyr these women. I'm sorry, she was a martyr woman. He was martyr, but they didn't. Shehisris, the gears on the side change. Shehisris, he was arguing with 85 Zakanim who didn't want to be martyr her, and he was fighting to be martyr her. And Omar Lemi said, so he held that if the guy is saying testimony without the direct intention to be martyr her, you could believe them, but the 85 Zakanim argued on him and said, no, you wouldn't be martyr. So if you're going to say that you can't be martyr, what does the Mishnah mean? Doesn't the Mishnah say if it was loinus chaven lahoyed, you believe the guy? What does that mean? If a guy is just saying something, but he's not even saying testimony, then you'll trust him. But if it's even coming to say edus, so you don't believe him at all. Yehu, the Hava Ka'amar Va'azil, he was walking along the streets and he said, Mani Kibei Chivai, who is in the Chivai's house? Mani Kibei Chivai, is there any next of kin in the Bei Chivai household? You know why I'm looking for the next of kin? Because I saw him die. And so there he wasn't saying testimony. He was just walking down the street, trying to notify the next of kin that he saw a death. So that's called the Seichel V'tumah. Or Ahuda Hava Ka'amar Va'azil, there was a guy walking around, he was saying, Vaili Leparsha's Riza. Woe is to this officer, this big security guard, Gibra Chayil. There was this big, powerful guy. Woe is to the Gibra Chayil. He didn't even mention his name. The Ava Papamadisa, the Shachar. Oh, this big bomba, strong guy, the protector, died. He didn't even mention his name, but we knew it was a Yid. The Intava Rabbi Yosef, Vitema Rava Lidvisu. And just based on that testimony, they were mater his wife. Or Ahuda have a Kamar Ba'azal Man Ikabe Chasa. Who is in the household of Chasa? I want to let them know that Tava Chasa. Omer Rab Nachman, Halakim, Rebbeinu Shalom, Achru Kabra Lachasa. When Rab Nachman heard the guy mentioning that Chasa died, Rab Nachman Rebbeinu Shalom, the fish ate him up. In other words, if he drowned, that means he's probably eaten by fish. No one came to ask him a shayla. But the almana of Chasa heard Rab Nachman say, Oy vey, Chasa was eaten by fish. When she heard that, the word Rab Nachman, the Chasa, she got married. If Rab Nachman said that, for sure I can get married without asking for a clear psak. And Rab Nachman didn't stop there. Amar Bashi Shmami, no, you see from here, that we know that Ma'im Shein Ishtay Yasura, Hanimi L'Chatchila, Avol Inosav Lo Mafkina Lomine. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It was the Ma'im Shein on Soy. Just because he said the likelihood of eating by fish, that doesn't mean halachically she's what to marry. Halachically she wasn't what to marry. But once she gets married, we don't make her divorce. I'm sorry? I guess we know that was the case. I guess he said he grounded her. Ikudamri, Intavar of Nachman the Devusi, or that those women there of Nachman Paskin that she's allowed to get married based on the Messiah Levitumai of the Goy. Ambachasa, Gava Rabba Isay. Isa the Salak, so there are those. So Amar Rab Nachman was mater. Why was Rab Nachman mater the Almana? Because Chasa the Gava Rabba Isa, he was a great man. He was very well known. In Isa the Salak, if he would have survived, Kala Islayla Milsa, we would have known. But the Gemara is saying, that's not true. We said earlier, it's not true. Loishna Gavarabba, Loishna Lav Gavarabba, whether he's a famous guy or not, it doesn't matter. The evidence, if the wife got married, we'll let her stay married. But the Chatchila Loi, we would never let her remain married. Let's just look at another line. He told her, I'm warning you, you better cut down some vegetables for me on Shabbos and serve it to my behemoths. V'yiloin, if you don't, katilna loch, kida katilna laponi bar Yisrael. I'll kill you like I killed your friend, the Amrilay. Why did I kill him? Because I told him, Bashali kader b'Shabbos, cook for me on Shabbos. V'loy bashali, and you don't want to cook for me, v'kaltilse, and I killed him. So Shama Devisu, his wife, the wife of the first victim, heard her husband was missing, and this man came and told her, by the way, this guy threatened me that he was going to kill me like he killed your husband. So he's confessing. So his wife said, oh, maybe let me go to the Rav and tell the Rav what I heard. Shehisa, Tilsa Wrigley. It was a year later, 3 regalim passed. And there are those who say it means 3 years later, and it's like 3 yardside later, and he didn't pass him. Abai couldn't pass him the Shaila. Rav Adabar said, told her, Zilla Kamed Rabbi Yosef. Go to Rabbi Yosef, the Charif Sakina, the sharp guy, maybe he'll have a heter for you. Azla Kamei, Pachad, he brought a raya, Mehamas Nisim. It says, Avid Chavim, Shayamoicha Perish B'Shuk. If a guy was selling Perish in the Shuk, Vamar Perish Alola Shal Arlahi. He said they're Arla. Not that we really need to believe they Shal Arla, but he wanted to say they're very fresh. Or Shal Azika, they're Azika, which Rashi tells us it could have been Perish Shvius, or it could be from a place called Azika, which is in Eretz Yisrael, which would require Krubus Maishris, or Shal Netravayin. Again, they're new pears from a new tree, they're fresh. Loyam or klum. It doesn't answer anything. You know why? Because Ella Lashbiach Mekhay. He's not really, he's lying. He's just saying this, so it should, people are going to want to buy it. I think it's quality product. So to the guy who said, I'll kill you like I killed him, he probably never killed anybody. He's just telling that to you to make you afraid so that you should listen to him. So therefore, you cannot bring a raya that someone really died, and therefore you cannot bring matter his wife. Okay, we'll stop here, and we'll be mamshech Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day, the last plot of Yevamos. Like, wow, we made it. We started it together, and Be'ez Hashem, we're finishing it together. We should be zoiche in good health, wealth, and happiness. Get the shadichem and shalom bayis, your shemaim Torah. We should be zoiche